listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network. ronanddon.com.
All right, it's the Ron and Don Show, only on the Ron and Don Radio Network. I want to thank everybody that came out to the Fran Nordstrom Guild Gala the other night, and boy, was it a hoedown. They had a really cool hoedown to raise thousands of dollars for Children's Hospital. That's exactly what they did. The place was sold out. It was amazing. Ron and I got to host, and we appreciate Christy Peterson, everybody at the Fran Nordstrom Guild, for making us a part of something bigger than yourself. So that was really great, and we appreciate everything that they've done for Children's Hospital, and really appreciate everything they've done for mental health when it comes to kids, because that's kind of what that night was all about. So thank you to you if you were there and you were a part of it. We really appreciate you, and we want to extend a note of gratitude. So, speaking of the Fran Nordstrom Guild, I don't drink anymore. I used to, when I would drink, I'd always order an Uber or Lyft. So I don't order an Uber or Lyft as much. But if I'm going to some part of town, I have to be there at a particular time, I will call an Uber or Lyft. Yesterday, I went to the game, the Seahawks game. They won yesterday.
Yeah, it was a good game.
They don't have a defense, but it looks like they have an offense, and it'll be a very different year for them at 7-2, and we'll see how they finish up, because it looks like they're just going to be in a lot of shootouts until their defense gets a little better. But nonetheless, when I went to the Fran Nordstrom Guild event the other night, I took a Lyft. When I went to a Seahawks game yesterday, I took a Lyft. If I feel like there's going to be no place to park, then I'll take a Lyft. The thing that bothers me, though, is as soon as you get out of the car, your phone dings, and they're asking for a tip for the driver that just dropped you off. And then if you don't tip the driver right then, what they will do is then they send you an email. So they send you a text message. Then they send you an email. If you don't tip,
and a notification on the app.
Yeah, and if you don't tip them then later on they remind you. If you don't tip them then when you go back in the app to use the app, let's say at the end of the event the other night or the end of your time at the stadium, then they ask you again to tip. And the tips are pretty hefty. They start out at two, then they want 4, then they want 6, then they want 8. It's never just $1. They want 15%, 20%, 25% of the ride, whatever that was. And if you remember when we all started to ride share, there were no tips. And it was the drivers who finally came out and said, hey, we need to ask for tips here. And now you have these rideshare companies that are doing it on their behalf, so they're not exchanging cash in the car. And sometimes I'll get in a car and I don't have a good experience, or the music's playing loud, or the gentleman or lady will be on their phone, or the car is super dirty inside, and I'm surprised that it's an Uber or a Lyft. And now the app wants to engage me, and they want me to tip this driver, and instead what you do is you can be tempted to start complaining about your experience. And I don't want to complain about my experience either. I just want to get from point A to point B. It bugs me a little bit that when they ask me for a tip and I don't tip the first time, that they keep coming at me for a tip for that particular driver.
Well, so for the first time,
how do you deal with that?
I'm trying to figure it out, and that's why this study that just came out is really informative to me. People have been studying tipping for a long time. We've talked about it on the Ron and Don Show for a long time about restaurants, or you go to the laundromat. Sometimes there's a tip jar, and you're like, really?
Right. Yeah.
Like, who do I need to tip? How much do I need to tip? And they've a lot of restaurants in the Pacific Northwest are like, they'll put on their menu now, our tips go into one giant pool. We're going to divvy it up with the back of the house staff and the front of the house staff. Or I've seen menus now that say, when you tip, we're keeping it because we already pay our staff a living wage. That's a new one that I've seen a couple times.
Oh, wow. I haven't seen
And so the interesting thing, though, is economists have a hard time studying this because you can only get little bits of data here and there. And it's hard to aggregate it all and to get reliable info on who was doing the tipping, where was it happening, what was the circumstance. And so Uber opened up their information to economists to study. They gave them 40 million Uber rides, and they gave them all the tipping data. And the interesting thing they could do is they know the gender of the person that tipped. They also know the gender of the driver. They could use the geographic information to know what was the demographics of that neighborhood. Was it an affluent neighborhood? Was it a poor neighborhood? What was the racial makeup of that neighborhood and of the driver and of the patron? Yeah. So they're able to throw this all in. Before I get to the results, do you think you would be biased, either overtly or subconsciously, about the gender of the driver? Would you tip more or less depending on the gender of the driver.
On the gender of the driver. Would I?
Yeah.
No.
You don't think you would? What about the age of the driver?
Well, hang on. If I'm in the car and the driver's a female and they start talking about having children and that she's a single mom, and if that comes up in that conversation, then I'd probably end up tipping her more. I'd probably tip her $5.
So you do have a bias against gender. What about age?
Not against. I'm just saying.
Wait, you have a.
If my baseline is $2. And I'm talking to someone that's a single parent because I'm a single parent, then that may go up to $5. Is if in the conversation,
so more than double.
I find out one of the reasons that they're driving is because they're a single parent.
All I'm saying is that there are biases.
That would be for a man or a woman. A lot of times, what I do with guys that have children is I'll give them $20 in cash, and I'll say, "I'm going to give you $20, but promise me you'll do this: that you'll buy your kids ice cream tonight, and that they get addicted to sugar." And then they end up dying young.
So what about race?
Which is not awesome on my part.
Do you think there's a bias on race?
I know in our culture there is a bias on race, so I'm going to have to say, of course, there's a bias on race. Yeah.
Okay, so this is where it gets super interesting, and so from the data, they say when they're looking at 40 million rides, they can tell who's going to tip by the rider before they ever get into an Uber.
Really?
So there are people that tip and people that don't tip. And it doesn't matter on service. So
what about tipping sometimes?
Well, let me just go through because I don't know that specific one.
Okay.
So they can say of these 40 million people, we're pretty confident on the ones that are going to tip before they even step into a car. So that I found really interesting. You go through life with the mindset of either I am going to be the type of person that tips, or I'm going to be the type of person that doesn't tip.
Okay.
Men tip more often than women by a small mark. So men tip around 17% of the time. Women tip 14.3% of the time. Those numbers to me are exceptionally low. So the vast majority of people do not tip.
Wow, I didn't know that.
When they pull up the thing on the app, they just hit ignore. They hit $0 and they walk away.
Wow.
And so also, now here's the thing where it's really interesting. Men that have a female driver tip 12% more if the driver is young. So if it's a younger female driver, men will tip more.
Okay.
Once that driver, the female driver, so you're a man, you're in the back.
Got it.
Once that woman gets to the age of 65, it's totally gone. So the increase in the male's tip disappears as the woman gets older. Women also tip women drivers more, but their age doesn't matter. So a woman with a woman driver will tip more all the way up and including women at 65. So that I found very interesting. Drivers, not the passengers, if a driver has a lower income or is Hispanic, they get tipped less. So if you are a Hispanic driver, you get tipped less than another racial makeup. And then also, riders leave higher tips if the driver shows up on time. So if you're looking at your app and it says this driver will be here in 6 minutes and the driver is there in 6 minutes, your tip goes up. If you see the same driver a second time, your tip goes up 27%.
Oh, wow.
If you see him a third time, it goes up again.
Wow.
So if you're in your neighborhood and that driver cruises the same neighborhood, you're going to tip them more, at least up to 3 times. And then riders, so if you're a passenger, if you have a perfect 5-star rating, you're going to tip twice as often as even someone with 4.75 stars. And then the biggest time frame for tippers is 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. And so the interesting thing to me was it's easy to overlay the men tipping younger women as some sort of patriarchal thing. And I think as a guy, you do feel for societally that you're supposed to pitch in. At least I do. If I have a driver that's a 20-something woman, there's this overlay that's like, I guess I'm supposed to tip more because that's my role in society and that's their role in their society. And even though...
Because you're the sugar daddy of society.
No, not that you're the sugar daddy. You just feel... There's like... You don't feel that?
No.
If it's a young female driver, you're like, oh, you treat them the same as a middle-aged male driver.
I'm tipping on service. If someone's on their phone and I tip, I would say 75% of the time. That would be interesting to me when people tip and don't tip and why. If you're on your phone talking to someone the whole time, you're not going to get a tip from me. If I get in your car and the music's loud and you have the seat opposite the driver's side, the passenger side up front, cranked all the way to the back, and I'm trying to get in, and you don't have the forethought of moving that seat up, and I have to ask you to move that seat, or I have to get out of the car and move the seat myself, then I'm not going to do that. If it's game day and you don't even know it's game day and you don't have the game on, you're just impervious to the fact that the game is on. It's the fourth quarter. The Seahawks are tied against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're down picking up stadium traffic, and you don't have the game on. You're not going to get a tip from me. You're just not. You're not. Unless you let me find the game on your radio, which I was able to do yesterday.
You left the game early?
Then I might leave you $5. What's that?
You left the game early.
I'm a single dad, man. As soon as that game was tied up, I know I got to get out of here. Because if I don't get out of here, then I'm never going to get out of here. I'm going to be 5 hours late to the babysitter. So, nonetheless, yeah, I tip sometimes. Sometimes I don't.
That's a shockingly low number, 17%.
Yeah. I'm really shocked by
If I'm reading this right.
No.
It says women tip 14% of the time with Uber. Men tip 17% of the time. Men's tips are also bigger. It's really low.
Yeah, that is really low. That's crazy. Hey, don't forget, Ron and Don are licensed real estate brokers. We do something called a Ron and Don coffee, where you can just sit down, have coffee with us. We did that with our friend Mary last week. We sat down. I made the coffee. She thought the coffee was fantastic, by the way.
Didn't you actually have someone assist you in the coffee making?
Maybe I had someone assist me.
Don't pretend like I saw what went down.
Yeah, nonetheless.
You wandered around the machine for a while, and then I didn't see you actually make the coffee.
What was cool, though, is Mary had a property, and she just wanted to know what her property was worth. And so Ron did some really cool neighborhood comparisons. We sat down. We had a PowerPoint presentation. We drank some coffee, and we made a new friend, I think. And I think you made a new friend. Mary's been my friend for a while. And then she walked away with knowing, hey, this would be a good time to sell my house. This would be the strategy. And this is what my house is really worth. This is what the net proceeds would be. And this is what I could go, if I wanted to go out and buy, which she does, this is what I could afford. So don't forget, there's a little halt in the condo market right now. So it's a great time to jump out and buy condos as we head into the holidays. And money has never been cheaper. It really hasn't. So it's a great time to own a piece of real estate. And we'd love to sit down, have a cup of coffee. We call it a Ron and Don sit down. If you'd like to sit down with us, all you have to do is go to ron@windermere.com. Send him a note. Or you can send me a note, dononeal@windermere.com. Those email addresses are up at ronanddon.com. And it just starts with a cup of coffee. And we'll sit down. If I can't make a good cup of coffee, we'll have somebody make a good cup of coffee for you. All right. Stuff I make sometimes a little strong, dog, isn't it? It's the Ron and Don Show, episode number 23, only on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Don't go anywhere unless you want to. It's the Ron and Don Show, starring Ron and Don, and sometimes me at ronanddon.com.